Okay, we're recording now.
Okay.
So, Patricia Klauer, it's so wonderful to speak to you. And I can't even imagine all the different stories that you have to tell us. But again, my name is Nicole Casanova. My interest and focus is on leverage. And this series is all about finding those stories, those big experiences or connections that catapulted people to that next piece of their business that changed their lives forever. And so, Patty, may I call you Patty?
Of course.
Okay, great.
Hi,
So
Nicole.
Patty and we go back, and she has a very, very interesting background. So I think if we can start off, one of the pieces that I like to focus on is the rave piece. So if you could just explain just quickly about the work that you do and the inspiration behind building it. So it's interesting because I actually am reading the book about your background right now again. So I don't know how much you want to share about how you got into systems integration. And so, but can you tell us a little bit about what you do and how you came to do it?
Sure. So basically, I'm a chiropractor originally. That's my professional career, and I was also in a spiritual community studying meditation, and I became drawn to meditation while I was in chiropractic school because of the stress.
Mm-hmm.
And I met an extraordinary teacher. And so a couple of years after I had graduated, while I was practicing, I moved to the East Coast with my partner at the time and a number of other people in our community. And I had to wait to license so I could practice in Boston. So I took a computer programming course, and lo and behold, I aced it. And I couldn't believe I aced it because I'd never even typed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I applied for a job at MIT as a systems programmer, and they hired me. And it sort of went from there. That was the year relational databases came out, and I was the new kid. So they gave me manuals and a place on the mainframe, and I taught myself really how to install, load data, write SQL, and develop applications using DB2, which was the largest relational database. And
this is great. I love your story.
So in a way, it kind of fits with leverage in a way, because people always ask me, how can you go from being a chiropractor into that world? Usually it's the other way around. You hear the stories of people going the other way. And what I saw that was similar was that as a chiropractor, you're really trained in a holistic system analysis, right? So we learn about all the different organisms in the body, but we're looking at it from a holistic perspective. And I think that's really the same way. I just applied that thinking when I went into relational databases and IT, because they're very complex, large systems. And most of the people who hire me are like a person coming into the office, kind of feeling freaked out, or a victim because they don't know what's going on and they need help. And so I'm a guide.
I want to stop you there because this section is about raving. So I have to rave about you. So give us an example of some of these clients that you helped, develop this huge organization for, this holistic approach. What were some of those endeavors? What were those clients, and what is it that you created?
Well, First Boston, which is now Credit Suisse First Boston, I worked with them and data modeled, and pretty much every piece of data that ran their system went through my brain at one point. So creating data models for every application that runs First Boston back in the late 80s, early 90s. Wells Fargo Bank, Fidelity Investments, the United Nations Development Program, designing a system. This was before the internet, so they needed to connect all the data in all the developing countries with headquarters that they were collecting around all their projects. So I designed a data model that would help to bring all that data together, and worked with people in South America to implement systems that could be used in no matter what computer anywhere in the world. And so those
Was
are,
also the New York Stock Exchange, was there something about that, or
well, no, just a number of other banks on Wall Street, Barclays, a few banks that have merged, Swiss Bank, and there was a bank called Manufacturers Hanover back then that merged. And
so so if we were to ask you, what if you could give us one or two stories about leverage? And when I say that, I mean, was there one connection or one relationship that changed the course of your life? And I already know that one answer. And I know that there are other ones as well. So um, you can answer from wherever you want. I know also that there was a time when you were able to leverage a lot of the relationships that you had in Silicon Valley and create a global organization as well. So, but you can tell us what were some of those relationships, and then I'm going to ask you a little bit about how you made them happen.
okay, I'm going to give you three,
Okay,
and they're all from different angles. So
excellent.
the first one, I'll go back to mentioning my spiritual teacher.
Uh-huh.
He was a really big advocate for women and in technology back in the 80s.
Mhm.
So he saw technology as being a great career for his women students. And he wanted his women students to do really well financially, because he felt that when we had a good financial base, that we could make better decisions for our own evolution,
Mhm.
that we don't have to rely on a man to get married to support ourselves and things like that. And so, and also he liked IT, and he especially liked relational database, because it was like the Tibetans would go into a cave and visualize a mandala and have to be very focused and precise, but have this very complex visualization to develop their mind in meditation. And he said, if you go to work every day and work on relational databases, that's the same thing. So that's our cave. So really working on Wall Street, working in the relational database technology was my meditation cave. And I did that for 13 years as a student. Well, I've actually done that many, many years longer than that. But that was I would say that relationship, that context was huge leverage for me, because first of all, the ability to meditate allowed me to navigate Wall Street and the challenge of being a woman in the 80s in a very male environment. And it also allowed me to kind of catapult myself into a career that gave me a lot of financial independence and a lot of choices in the future.
I love I love that your spiritual teacher said that your spiritual practice is to be in this world and to have a whole community of people support you by going into those same learning environments as well, and have you all succeed and excel and be in a relationship this many years later. So I can imagine that was a huge, that completely changed the trajectory of your life. That was definitely one. Okay, well, what are the next two?
Well, there was a woman who at First Boston who was not my boss, but she was my boss's boss. And
Mhm.
there was also another person at First Boston who is now Vivek Wadhwa, who's pretty well known. He's doing a lot of studies in gender and technology.
Uh-huh.
And Vivek was a big advocate and mentor of mine while I was at First Boston, and he really supported me. He wanted me on his team, but I ended up working in a different team. And I worked for another woman who ended up rehiring me at Fidelity probably 3 times later on, and referring me to so many different people in my career. I think probably 1 out of every 3 or 4 jobs I've ever had, or contracts I ever had, was because of Liz. So it's just, I say that because I think networking is really important. And I think when you do a really good job and you connect with people and they trust you and rely on you, you can really support one another in that way. And I think women should do that more.
Absolutely. So, well, before we go into the third one, let me just ask you questions about this one. And since you're speaking about networking and how do you connect with people, so was there a specific message or way that you got in front of her or them, or how did you create a connection that was worthy of her being your major reference for the next many, many years?
Well, actually, let me tell. I have a better story about Vivek. I
Okay.
hope he doesn't mind. When I first interviewed at First Boston, I interviewed for Vivek's team, and Vivek was the head of technology of all of the new development for all the new systems. And he interviewed me. He wanted me on his team, so he asked me to meet with his team leader. So I came in and met with his team leader, and he was asking me lots of questions about DB2, but very, very, very technical questions about the architecture, et cetera. And I was applying for a job as a DB2 programmer. And so I knew a lot of the answers because of my background and the fact that I just read all the manuals. So I knew a lot of the answers. So he kept asking me harder and harder answers, but then I didn't do so well and in the other answers. So I became a little bit frustrated with the interview. So finally I said, stick to the resume. I told him, you're asking me questions that really don't pertain to the job description that you're hiring me for. They're much more technical. And the fact that I know some of the answers is to my credit. So the fact that I don't know some of these answers, you should be, asking me questions more about my job description. So I guess I decided to blow off the possibility of getting the job because I was just really frustrated with his aggressiveness. So anyway, the next day I get a call back from Vivek and he says, he really wants you. He wants you on our team. And I said, Vivek, the reason he wants you is because I'm a fighter. And he goes, yes. And I go, but I'm a woman. I don't want to fight every day. I don't want to be on a team of men with a bunch of men and have to fight every day on my job. So I'm going to take this other job with Liz in Liz's group or in Liz's department. And he's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. But that's actually true. And so I took this other job in the data modeling group. And because I think there's a fundamental thing, especially back in the 80s, and it's changing now, we were talking about that, and that women had to adopt a much more aggressive stance to be successful in the business world back then. And I think the whole world is starting to recognize that women's leadership qualities come from a different place, and they're equally valuable. And I was not willing to surrender that and become something that I'm not.
And you were so vocal in doing that.
Yeah, I was able to do it. That's not the issue. I will take a stand for myself, but I didn't want a job where that's the way I had to be all the time in order to, work in that environment. And I made it really clear.
I'm absolutely impressed. I love that you called him out in the meeting, and I love that you actually stuck to your truth and knew exactly what was going to support you most and didn't choose what could have been a better opportunity. Okay, tell me more about the third one, and then I'm going to talk to you. We're going to speak a little bit about the technology piece because I know this is something that fits for you perfectly.
The third one is, I call it my road to Damascus experience. And after 15 years in running a business, managing large data warehouse implementations around the world, we had the internet crash. And so I took a couple of years off, and I was thinking about going back to work, and I thought, okay, I can do anything. Do I want to just go back in and do all the same things the same way? And I spent the day at the beach, and I had a long talk with myself. And I started thinking about if money was no object, what did I really care about? What did I want to serve? What did I want to put myself into service of in this world. And I actually came up with, without realizing it, the whole concept of social entrepreneurism and the idea that business and economics, taking a page out of my teacher's handbook, really, could be a way to serve the whole world if done from the right place. So again, the idea is that every constituent in a deal should be served. That we should do business from a place of enough resources rather than from a place of greed. And then there was a whole host of other sort of a download almost of visions I had for the world that have since, over the last 10 years, have really, this was in 2003, so in the last 10 years it really kind of has started to evolve in that direction, which is really exciting. But after that day, I was so excited. I wrote and wrote and wrote about it, and I was talking to everyone who would listen. And within 3 days, my friend Dina Bitton, who was the chairman of the board of the Women's Technology Cluster, an incubator in San Francisco that supported women who were starting technology companies, introduced me to Amber Nystrom. And Amber was starting an organization called Social Fusion, which was a social entrepreneurial organization to help social enterprise groups. So I had a meeting with her, and it was a 15-minute meeting that lasted 3 hours. And within a month, I sold my house in Southern California, moved to San Francisco. We launched Social Fusion with a big event that was sold out and never looked back. And it was a really, really important moment, I think in the Bay Area and for the whole movement, because I think that Social Fusion really educated a lot of people. The Silicon Valley world was reeling from the internet crash. And there were a lot of people doing some soul searching about what happened and what they wanted to do with their life, just like I was. And I think that what we provided was a forum so that they could offer their skills to people who had a mission and also wanted to develop a business.
So when you say that they could offer people, so who was the they? I want you to speak a little bit to how you were able to rally the troops and get a community of people that had previously only been thinking about, bottom line and stock prices, and how were you able to get them involved? And I know that you did these amazing events globally, and that this was an organization that had major reach. So I'm curious to know a little bit about, how did you get in front of, what was the messaging? How did you actually get those people that were thinking in a very different way to come on board and want to support companies in doing things better?
I think there were some key pieces. One of them was that when we brought organizations into Social Fusion, we had an application process that was very rigorous. So we only allowed entrepreneurs in that had that were ready to receive coaching and mentoring from high-level individuals that we determined had a scalable and replicable venture, and that they had the maturity in this venture in themselves to be able to really take action. And so we were very mindful that we were matching them up with CEOs from Silicon Valley and other professional mentors, that we didn't want to waste anyone's time, and we were very careful in that matchup so everyone would get value out of it. And really, we ended up having a bigger list of mentors and CEOs who wanted to coach enterprises than we had the enterprises to receive the coaching, because we were really mindful of that relationship. The second thing, I think, was our conversations in social enterprises. Amber is a brilliant facilitator, and she would bring people from all sides of a story, from the entrepreneur perspective, from the government, local government, from finance, it's foundations, nonprofits, everyone on a panel. And then we would have topics relevant topics related to it that would both engage people, get people thinking, engage the audience. And then they were also networking events, because pretty soon they were oversubscribed and sold out, and people from the venture community, from the foundation community, from the local governments, from entrepreneurs, all would come and they would meet each other. And there was no other forum for everyone to really meet in a way and have such provocative subjects to discuss.
Okay, so that piece right there is what I'd love to see, when people leverage the power of connections and communities, and it's not just I'm working with this one group. The fact that you and Amber were able to bring in all of these other, prior to that, probably disparate communities, whether it was, the VCs or the government, and have an experience where you're able to leverage what each of those groups brings to the table, and then it supports everybody as well. So I love when there's a shared experience and it's not just a one-to-one, it's the connection of the community is something that empowers everybody there. So I think I call that leverage times 12. So I love that piece. So let me ask you some other pieces around, I'm going to have us skipped, and we're going to go to the women in technology piece, because you're the perfect person to speak to this. So let me just take a look. So how about this? I call this tribes and tribulations. So what are some of your frustrations with being a woman entrepreneur in technology, and how have you overcome them? And have they changed since what you saw in the 80s? And what were those, and what are the changes that you've seen?
Well, I think I addressed one of them, right, with that. Whoops, sorry.
That's it.
I think I addressed one of them in that anecdote earlier on. I think that was a very classic 80s kind of anecdote. And I don't think that, well, maybe things are like that now. It's just that I'm older. So, I probably have the experience on my resume and a little more gravitas that I don't have to deal with that in the same way. But I imagine that maybe younger women still do. I don't know about that, if it has changed that much. I that's something that's important to note. I would say that I think that there's a lot more emphasis on collaboration, and but I'm afraid that there's still, I think women coming into, whether it's technology or business, are still expected to be everything. They're still expected to be super smart, as smart as or smarter than the guy, right? I think they're still expected to be hot. I think they're still expected to be, an awesome mom, right? That's a lot. That's like and we all want to be all those things too, right? So we expect that from ourselves, right? So I think that I actually think it might be skewed a little bit more challenging now than it even was when I was coming up in the 80s.
Because now we have so many other things that we're adding to our list of things to do and things to be. Well, let me ask you more about, are there specific pieces of technology that you've seen that you think have been created with a woman in mind? I think you've probably seen recently, there's the whole Goldilocks, and there's this conversation, not just about STEM, but like how are games even being created for girls that aren't pink, and so if we were to look at technology as a whole right now, are there any specific things that you've come across that you think were absolutely made with a woman in mind?
Well, I come across a lot of entrepreneurs and startups, and so people with ideas. And so just the other day, I met a woman who really amazing networking person, and the whole company is women started, women led, and it's very technical networking software that's coming up with a new device that makes an iPhone look like a doorstop. So the idea behind that is that women and it's a device that really supports the whole family, the whole home.
Mhm.
So it's a device that allows for the planning of your life, right? So all the different other aspects of your life around managing the bank account, managing, just all the different things that you need to manage. So this is a device that was thought about from a woman's perspective. So taking the iPhone type of device and now taking it beyond, imagine that 2 or 3 times extended with uh, very sophisticated networking software, identity software that allows it to identify whoever has the device at the time in the family, and then skinning it with the right applications and responses and abilities based on that. So
So
that's kind of an
curious.
example of the way a woman would think about it, right?
I'm so curious. I'm so curious to see that when it comes out. I hope that they make it big. So if you were to think about one piece of technology that you'd actually like to see in the world that was created with a woman's perspective in mind, what would that be? I'm putting you on the spot.
No
But
kidding. One piece of technology with a woman's perspective. Uh, Gosh. Hmm. Can we come back to it?
we can totally come back to that. I'm looking at this last. This is a question I like to ask because everybody has their apps, and when women often we get together, we share all of these things that we don't get to share when we're in meetings, and it's like what product, what this, what that. What pieces of technology do you use as your secret weapons? So are there certain apps or I would say probably half the things that I use are because not only did they come recommended, but I've had, friends or somebody say, you need to have this. Are there any specific ones that you can't live without?
Yeah, there's a piece of technology. It's an audio recording technology that I have both on my phone and my computer. And it's an app that allows me in a meeting it's called Audio Note. And it allows me to record everything so that I don't have to take notes because much more audio.
Mhm.
So I have to interview a lot of people in my work. And so I can just listen later and get the relevant stuff. And so in the meeting in that moment, I'm present, and I'm not worried about taking notes or missing information.
And so does that convert it to text later, or is it just audio?
Well, what's so cool about it is that it has like a notepad
Uh-huh.
um, interface. So when you write down a note at any given time,
Mhm.
it's doing it at the time code
Okay.
in the audio. So if we're talking about a particular subject right now, okay, let's say we're having this whole conversation and I was recording it, and I write apps right now.
Hmm.
So I could skip to that piece of our conversation and just go into the whole conversation about apps. So that saves me so much time when I'm doing my.
This is like the one piece of technology that I need so badly. I've tried everything. I've tried Dragon, and I'm using on the Mac. You can start recording, but even I have a million different ones on my phone. Everything I ever look at, there are always at least every 6 words is a mess. There's always some kind of. I've taken audio and I've sent it to like text to translation or translation to text, and
Yeah, I'm not sure. You know what? I haven't really tried the translation to text part of it. I'll have to look at that, but it's just really for my own, so I can be present. When I was a doctor, I hated using computers in the clinical environment, and it's something when I'm working with doctors in hospitals now, I have empathy for, and they have to deal with, because you want to be present with the person that you're with, your patient or whoever you're interviewing, and you don't want to sit there and take notes all the time, and that divide your attention. So this really records everything. And when you do take a note, it's at the point where you're having the conversation. So you can quickly skip to that. You can go back to it. So that's what it is. And in terms of taking that whole recording and translating it to text, I haven't tried that, but that's a really good idea, and I bet there's a way to do it.
I bought the Live Scribe. I don't know if you know what that is. It's the
Yeah, I've tried that before
and
too.
you record it, but then I have to upload it, and that's work for me. So, okay, so I'm gonna.
Okay, so I thought of a piece of software that, as a woman, that I would love, and it's kind of for work a little bit, but it's also for personal. I would love, and I've been using, Apple's products, but I would just love a much easier way to, cut and paste a piece of text, grab a piece of music from iTunes, or something, a photo, a little video clip, and really, really seamlessly, easily put it all together for a multimedia experience that's really simple, almost like creating a electronic greeting card for someone. Because I think that sometimes what we want to do is express an idea or our vision in different ways, because we're all different. Some of us are visual, some of us are audio, some of us are tactile, or we need to read, and express it in all these different ways in a very easy method that doesn't take a lot. I'm not distracted by the technology of putting it together. I can be in the creative art of kind of making a collage.
It'd be nice to just have like the flow, and like I'm really wanting something to start at, like, I don't even deal with autocorrect anymore, and I'm so wanting a piece of technology to take whatever in my brain and get it on the paper. It's like there's too many steps between me having to type.
Yeah.
But at some point we'll have the little chip in the back of our heads.
Yeah.
So if you were to say the top one do and the top one don't for what it is to be a woman in technology. As a woman in technology, what's the first thing, the top thing that you would make sure every woman does? And what's the one thing you'd make sure that they don't?
Can I flip
questions?
that? Can I flip that? So if I thought of one thing in terms of the theme of leverage, okay?
Yes.
And I think it's true for women in technology, absolutely, but it's probably true for anyone that's anyone. I would say that, and it goes back to the whole theme of my life, and pretty much the thread that's come through all of this, is that personal resilience is your ultimate leverage. And, what do I mean by personal resilience? Because, again, there's so many demands in our life, and technology is actually creating greater and greater demands on our lives. And women in technology now, we have to not only use technology like everyone else in the world, but we have to excel at it and be innovative at it and be successful in business with it. It's like it ups our game so many times, and we have to be better, right? Because we don't have the advantage of being in the inner circle. That's just the way it is. So personal resilience, what I would say is, why don't we do something right now to demonstrate it? Can we do that?
Ooh, what would that be?
So not only right now, but anyone in the future watching this can have the direct experience of what I mean. So what I mean by that is that every single one of us, at the core of who we are, is awake, aware, consciousness, and we are at peace at the core of it. No matter how stressful it is, no matter how blissful it is, at the core of that is peace, and at the core of us is peace, and it's with us in every moment, and it's with us right now, and a lot of us are too busy to take a half an hour out of our day to sit and meditate, or to just sit in silence and really connect with that, which is an ideal thing to do. but a lot of us don't have the time. But the point is that we don't have to wait for that because
Mm-hmm.
it's always here. And it's really just, it only takes a few seconds to redirect our attention momentarily to what's actually holding the space of our conversation, of all of us, wherever we're sitting right now, listening to this, whether it's my kitchen table or your office, or somebody else might be sitting on their sofa in their living room or in a cafe. What's here for all of us underneath it all is peace. And we can know that by simply connecting in with ourselves by taking a deep breath. So let's take a deep breath
Okay, let's do it.
and relax the back of your tongue so that it's just hovering in your mouth. And then take another deep breath. And just move your attention to feeling or noticing the spaciousness that's holding this conversation, that's holding the words that I'm speaking right now. And connect with that. Because that's at the core of everything. That's who you are. And that's who I am. And that's where we're all connected. And if we can each take a moment at any moment in time and experience that directly, that's your ultimate leverage.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Patty.
You're welcome.
I mean, one, I love you. And I love that the way you focused specifically on leverage was about how do you take the truth that's within us and actually build upon that. And especially coming off of the conversation all about women and technology and the speed and all that, to take the craziness of that and to then focus it internally and see that if we can own that little piece, even if it's in a second, even if it's in a moment, then that's the highest leverage that we can have.
Exactly. And it's always here.
Thank you so much. It's so easy to forget that. It's so easy to forget it, even when you've gone to yoga at 6:30 in the morning and you're just back in it. Oh, so the last question is really around what would support you. So the idea of putting this out there as well is that I'd like to create an interactive experience. This isn't just a one-way conversation. It's really about how can we create leverage in all relationships. And so is there anything in particular that you would like support on?
Well, really, my mission, my personal mission, and my professional mission is to serve you, women like you, and other women who are listening to this. So if I can bring my experience or my support, my technical ability, um, I have that to offer. I, as you know, because you've attended, I host retreats from time to time. I'm going to be rolling out an actual course, and I'm really orienting it around women entrepreneurs.
Oh.
Not that I don't love the men, and men are invited, but you guys are in my heart.
Absolutely. And there is that conversation about, the integrated approach. And I'm so thankful that you're creating something that is focusing on women and women entrepreneurs. And I can speak as a very fortunate participant to have been in a beautiful, beautiful sanctuary in Santa Fe with an amazing group of what I call the divine mothers. These are, the women leaders that integrate not just being in the world and killing it as amazing, amazing business leaders, but really know how to live from a place of purpose. So anything I can do or we can do to support you, please, I'm going to have a place for your information. If you have any write-up or anything that you want to describe this next coursework and any of the events, let me know and I'll post it. So with that, I'm going to just tell you how much I love you, and I'm going to thank you so much for being available today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. I love doing this. Thanks,
Oh,
Nicole.
you are so welcome.
You too.
Thank you, my dear. Okay, I'm gonna let us go, and I'll say maybe hello to you on the other side. Bye.
Okay.